Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Firstly, I want to thank Ravi, Mukund, and the entire NPC organizing team for giving me an opportunity to be here with all of you today. So as you saw in the opening on the little video there, I was asked to actually speak about billion-dollar opportunities, the opportunities to build billion-dollar companies from India. And I think it's a very interesting topic. I don't know how relevant it is because of what I'm about to tell you, but I think it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's a topic that in the technology industry we spend a lot of time talking about. How to build billion-dollar technology companies, and I think that's a good thing to talk about, right? And what I thought I'd do is number one, just as I usually like to do, share a few facts, and then second, share with you at least my perspectives around what are the 4 or 5 big spaces around which Indian companies can build billion-dollar companies. Now, by the way, as Rahul mentioned, I think in the technology industry is the only industry in the world. When we say $1 billion, we mean $1 billion of market value. Every industry, when they say billion, they mean $1 billion of revenue, right? So essentially to get to $1 billion of market value, depending on the sub-segment that you're in, you have to get to between 100 million and about 500 million of revenue. So because you can actually get to about a 10x revenue multiple if you're really, really good and you're growing 100% year on year, or you can get to about a 2x revenue multiple, right? So you still have to get to north of $100 million of revenue. I want to start with sharing with you a couple of facts, because I think in India we don't give ourselves enough credit for the capabilities that Indian entrepreneurs have to build billion-dollar tech companies. Not yet as much in the product space, but building billion-dollar tech companies. I don't know how many of you know this, but it just struck me over the last 3 or 4 months that TCS now has a market value of $70 billion. Hewlett-Packard has a market value of $45 billion. Cognizant's market value is higher than Dell. TCS's market value is higher than Yahoo and LinkedIn put together. And at the current trajectory, TCS's market value will be higher than Yahoo, LinkedIn, and Twitter at its IPO price put together. Guys, this is pretty remarkable because these companies have been built over the last 20 to 30 years by entrepreneurs just like you. Valuation, publicly traded internet companies. Or in the private markets, there are quite there are a few, maybe 10 or 15, depending on who you talk to. How many billion-dollar SaaS companies, pure SaaS companies, that are publicly traded in the US today? 10. Obviously, Salesforce leads the way now with a $30 billion cap. Okay, so if you look at consumer internet companies, including sort of all variations of that, mobile, commerce, so on and so forth, that number is 30 in the US, and you add SaaS, there's another 10, so you're looking at 40. Well, we have this infatuation with, comparing ourselves with Silicon Valley. So let's look at China. That's the other infatuation we have. Although increasingly, we're not talking about China as much, but I think we should because of what I'm about to say in the next couple of minutes. China's internet now has 550 million users. China has 250 million Chinese who transact online. The largest e-commerce company is Taobao. Taobao this year will do $200 billion of transactions. 200 billion. China has 17 publicly traded internet companies. So the US has 30, China has 17. So guys, I think it's really awesome for us to talk about building billion-dollar technology companies, but the reality is over the next decade, we'll probably have between 10 and 15. But that's still pretty damn awesome, because today we only have one. Billion-dollar publicly traded internet companies, we have one, and that is Just Dial. Just Dial market cap, 1.2 billion. We have 2 in the private markets, as best, as the media has claimed, and as best as I can tell. InMobi and Flipkart, both over $1 billion valuations in the private market. So today India has 3 billion-dollar companies, but now I'm including private companies. So over the next 7 years, if we fast forward to 2020, how many could we have? Well, clearly, Sanjeev, InfoEdge, and make my trip. InfoEdge, 700 million plus market value, make my trip 500 million plus market value. Over the next 7 years, don't buy gold, buy these two stocks. Guarantee, right, Sanjeev? Sanjeev's no comment. Sanjeev is probably in his quiet period or something, right? So, guys, it's a no-brainer, right? These two companies are going to be over $1 billion. So 3 plus 2, 5. So now the question becomes, how many more companies will get to be billion-dollar valuation companies over the next 7 or 8 years? And the answer is probably somewhere between 5 and 7. But for India to have 10 to 12 billion-dollar product companies, internet, mobile internet, software as a service, etc., we think is pretty awesome, right? And the question then becomes, well, where are they going to come from? Well, we think that there are probably 4 or 5 spaces where these companies will get built. 2 of them focus on international markets, 2 of them focus on domestic markets, and then 2 of them are sort of enablers. You can build them in India and they could kind of move around the world, right? And I'm going to focus primarily on the 2 that are domestic market opportunities, but I'll touch on the others because I think it's probably relevant for this group. The first is obviously SaaS. I think there's a lot of discussion today and tomorrow about SaaS, but I actually think SaaS is one of the most exciting opportunities for Indian startups to build global businesses. Why? By the way, we already have $7 billion IT services companies out of India. We talked about TCS and Cognizant, but there's also Infosys, there's Wipro, and several others. $7 billion IT services companies. Why is that relevant? Because you know what, guys? Sitting out of Bangalore, we figured out how to sell in the US. Right? 3 million people employed in an industry where Indians figured out how to sell $100 billion worth of services in America. Guess to whom? To CIOs, right? Well, that's pretty cool. Because if you want to build a sales team, I actually know who we want to hire. I mean, the IT services companies may not like that, but there are sales teams that actually know how to sell large deals, small deals, medium-sized deals to American companies. So SaaS is very, very interesting because, number one, we've proven we can do this. Now, the best SaaS companies will also start in India, and they will sell to Indian businesses. As we just heard, the Indian software market is $4 billion. And by the way, having sold a lot of software in my life, I can tell you, if we can sell to an Indian CIO, you can sell to anybody. You can sell to anybody. It's really hard. It takes 6 to 9 months. You got to go through multiple evaluations. But man, if you can do it, you can sell to anybody. Selling to JP Morgan, piece of cake. First sell to the Indian banks, right? So SaaS is actually very interesting because we have a history there. And history is very important because we have an ecosystem, we have capability. We have 3 million engineers who are building products now for other people. They can build products for themselves. But also, actually, the reason SaaS is very interesting, and I get very excited about it, is because in many ways, the new consumer is SMB. What do I mean by that? There are 2.4 billion consumers on the internet today. There are 100 million businesses in the world. 100 million businesses in the world. Okay, this includes obviously a large number of them are SMBs. Only 20 million of them have a web presence today. Only 20 million have a web presence today. The first thing over the next decade, 90 to 100 million businesses will be on the internet. What does that mean, guys? That means you can now distribute product over the web. Digital distribution of software products is going to hit all kinds of new heights. So all of a sudden, it's great to have an office in the US, but maybe we don't. And that's why you're seeing a number of your companies, you can actually get a couple of hundred, 1,000, maybe even 10,000 small businesses buying your product, paying for your product, with a 5-member engineering team in Bangalore or Chennai or Bombay without having a single salesperson in the US. Now imagine a world when you have 90 to 100 million of these businesses around the world who are on the internet, who are buying things on the internet. All of a sudden, discovery, distribution, marketing, sales, that whole equation changes. So SaaS is very interesting. The other very interesting space is ad tech. The global advertising industry is about $500 billion. Digital advertising today is fast approaching $100 billion. In the next 6-7 years, that number goes to $200 billion. What does that mean? And not only does it go to $200 billion, everything they've known about advertising changes, right? Mobile advertising is taking off. Local is going to become hyper-local. Video is going to become huge. And display advertising is changing fundamentally. exchanges, real-time buying, all these kinds of things. What this means is if you actually know something about ad tech and you can really go build interesting companies, those companies can be huge. InMobi, one of $3 billion companies, is an ad tech company built out of Bangalore, revenue from outside of India. Vizuri, if you ask me, one of the most interesting remarketing companies in India is Vizuri. Which is the only ad network in the world that can project to a 25-meter radius, this is what they tell me anyway, local targeting. It's a company called AdNear. It's in India. Ad tech, very interesting, right? But these are companies that will build some base in India, but very quickly will have to start penetrating in segments, penetrating global markets. The two domestic opportunities are e-commerce. Bad word these days, I'm told. But actually, it's a pretty good word. For in a minute, I'll tell you why. And the other one is obviously local and classifieds. So e-commerce, okay? India has, at the end of last year, 150 million internet users. By end of this year, which is 2 months away, we'll have 200 million internet users. India is adding 3 to 4 million internet users a month. They're all on mobile, and they're being added every month. And this is despite not having bandwidth and all these other issues, right? Of the 150 million, only 25 million Indians transact online. Remember that thing I told you about China? 250 million Chinese transact online. Now let's fast forward to the year 2020. 2020, India will have 500 million internet users. The only thing that can prevent that right now is a nuclear war with Pakistan. The only thing, because Indians want to get on the internet. 500 million internet users. Reliance Jio will launch sometime over the next year or two, and when that happens, we will start seeing broadband happening. And it's very likely that by the year 2020, we not only will we have 500 million internet users, 200 to 300 million of them will have broadband. And it's quite possible, actually in fact, not much can stop it at this point, that 100 million Indians will transact online. When you have 100 million Indians transacting online, we are going to have several billion-dollar commerce companies. Make My Trip today is in the travel space. Clearly, we'll have at least 2 billion-dollar online travel companies. On the product space, Flipkart today clearly leads the way, but we can have a few more, not 10, but a few more billion-dollar product companies. And so that's in commerce, right? So if you want to think about scale, commerce is very interesting. Now, I know the venture capital community looks at this and says, oh my God, it requires $500 million. It does, because you can't build $1 billion companies on 50 paisa, right? I mean, and now it's 2014, Sanjeev, right? That was all this global capital, and it's got to be put somewhere. And so it should be put in e-commerce. The other space is local and classifieds. Just Dial, local company. InfoEdge, Sanjeev's company, classifieds company, now actually with lots of different businesses. We think local and classifieds is one of the most interesting spaces in India. And why? For this simple reason. India has 47 million small businesses. Only 150,000 of them advertised before Just Dial became Just Dial. 150,000 businesses advertised in India, that's in newsprint. In TV, 10,000 businesses advertised. In radio, 6,000 businesses advertised. Just Dial, 1.2 billion cap, has 200,000 advertisers. I want you to imagine an India a decade from now where 10 million businesses advertise. That is going to happen. Has anybody solved how to get to 10 million today? The answer is not. Will it get solved? Absolutely. Just Dial's working on it. Hundreds of local startups are working on it. Google is working on it. But the companies that solve that problem, which is how to effectively build solutions where 10 million SMBs in India can advertise, will definitely have hundreds of millions of revenue and billions of dollars of market value. So commerce, e-commerce, and local and classifieds, those are two domestic segments. Then the two segments that are very interesting that are enablers, one is payments. Only 18 million Indians have credit cards, 250 million Indians have debit cards, but actually most of them like cash on delivery, right? Why? For various reasons. Payments we think is very, very interesting. And particularly, we like Indians, the game in India is to sell to 500 million Indians 30 rupees at a time. Micro payments. Will it get solved? Probably get solved. The company that solves it could be bigger than PayPal. Has it been solved yet? Answer not. And finally, India is going to be a voice access internet economy over the next 10, 15 years. Why? Because only 150 million Indians speak, read, and write English. Nuance has bought every single interesting voice company in the world. You build a company, or if you can, where voice works perfectly in every Indian language, that becomes superbly interesting. And that's just one of many interesting platform plays that are going to essentially make the Indic web happen, right? So those are 5 or 6 of the segments that are interesting. And I want to wrap by letting you know, I think it's very important for us to keep in mind that in India, we have built 7, actually with just $8 billion cap tech companies. The largest one is 70 billions, bigger than HP. It's bigger than the cap of several of the internet companies that we think in the world are amazing, right? And even if you look at just the product ecosystem, internet, SaaS, and everything around it, today we have 3, public and private, 3 companies, and we'll easily have 10 or 12. And the last thing I'll end with is, I think in India, given the massive local market opportunity we have, Rahul talked about it, Sanjeev talked about it, building a billion-dollar company is very, very interesting, and we should all aspire to that. But what makes me even more exciting is the opportunity to build thousands of companies that have between 10 and 100 million valuation. Because I think all of you would agree, you build a company that's 500 crores and you own 40, 50% of it, that's not a bad deal. Thank you.